Oh, it's me too, man. It's always good vibes, man. Like I think even during these conversations, there's some of the podcasters I love. Is most likely this guy called Joe Rogan. Not because of maybe what he talks about, but the way he has conversations with his guests. It's more like, okay, we're chatting, we're chilling, like, let's talk about life and everything that interests us. So I just kind of wanted to start with one question because it's something I'm always fascinated about. Looking at the work you've done from Killtopia, all these other amazing comic books you've been working on, the gaming books and everything. Just tell me, how was Dave like at 6 and 7 when he was growing up? Like, I just want to see your journey, like being exposed to all this world.
Yeah, so when I was young, like I was like, even at that young age, I was really into writing and telling stories. I know that sounds kind of cliche, like everyone says, "Oh, I was a storyteller from the beginning." Kind of was true for me though, and what the kind of stories I used to write when I was really young were about video games,
Yeah.
which is, I'm a big video gamer. I write books about video game history, stuff like that. Um, and the story I tell everyone was I got into big trouble at primary school for stealing graph paper, the paper with the grid lines on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did that because I wanted to make my own Mario Brother levels, and the blocks and the graph paper helped me map out the platforms and the levels and the coins. So it was all kind of, it was all parallel and sort of made sense. And I
Yeah.
would write these little stories. Oh, Mario's in this new world and he's gonna like save the princess and and I was like, but I got into trouble for doing that. I was stealing school supplies technically. But from there, yeah, I used to write. I knew I wanted to do something about video games initially.
Mhm.
Not comics. I wanted to be a video game writer. I wanted to make my own video game stories. But I would do that. I remember making one about like an intergalactic American football league where all the like teams were like aliens and weird creatures and animals and stuff like that. But yeah, I used to read a lot as well. I used to my earliest, I think, experience with comics were things like, like the Beano is a
Yeah.
classic one, especially being from Scotland. It's
Yeah.
such a institution. But I used to read like X-Men. Was probably my first like Marvel experience. The old Simpsons comics, Sonic the Hedgehog comics, which are still going today. They're amazing. But actually, I like even going into high school, I didn't even want to be a comic writer. I had no interest in it, but I wanted
Yeah.
to be a games journalist. I just knew that I wanted to write about video games. Me being naive, though, I thought the job was, hey, you just get to play video games all day and write about them, which is
Doesn't
I
work.
eventually I eventually became a full-time career game journalist. I did it for about almost a decade, actually. So from like 2006 to 2014, I think. Yeah, would have been about then. I wrote for game magazines. I moved down to England with my wife, and had an in-house staff job at like a couple of gaming magazines and websites. And then I just sort of I fell out of love with it partly because the gaming audience could be quite toxic,
Yeah.
especially if you're a games journalist. You get a lot of shit for just like doing your job, like
Say
oh
what you feel about a certain point. Yeah. Yes. I know what you mean. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, and it's like, oh, I've been looking forward to this game for a year, and you gave it a 6 out of 10. You're just a hack. You're a shill, and I'm like, I'm just doing my job, mate. It's not a
Yeah.
good game.
Yeah,
Um,
you know what? I see where you're coming from. To be honest with you, I think I feel like even people who do those jobs, they're trying. If you give a game out 6 out of 10 because you played it and maybe you're not navigating the world they've created properly, there's tools that don't work really well. If you review it, it helps the company make the game better. People don't realize actually people who do that help these gaming companies improve, their technology to try and catch up with what people are more interested in. So
yeah.
yeah, it's just it's crazy how people react. But Dave, actually, I wanted to ask you as well. Like, I used to be a big gamer. I'm talking about PlayStation 2, 3, 4, 5. But it got to a point where I got busy with filmmaking and then I started getting back into comic books. But I'm at a point in my life right now where I feel like I need to go back to gaming. So I need you to recommend me like the first games I would be playing if I wanted to get back into gaming.
Oh god. Oh, no,
Like something you're playing right now.
I'm looking over here. All my games are off in the distance there. Do you like Final Fantasy? You
Yes.
ever play that?
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Remake is stunning. It's like that's a PlayStation 4 one, but that was one of my big like watershed moments in gaming for me, was Final Fantasy VII when it first came out. I think it was in 1997 it came out on PlayStation 1. I remember playing that game and just being like, oh my God. And then for like years they were talking about doing a remake, but it seemed like it would never happen. And then it did happen and it was amazing. And it's like, oh my God, they did it. So if you like that, I'd recommend that. Also, probably one of my favorite games of the last few years was Elden Ring.
Oh,
But
nice.
it depends how how into the Dark Souls games you are, because they're not easy. They're frustratingly difficult, but I love them. But that for me is like one of the best games of the generation so far.
Do you play online as well sometimes, or is just mostly like you play like just by yourself, or do you ever do online gaming as well?
Mostly by myself, but I will say actually, so when lockdown happened, you know, when the first lockdown happened, me and my friends agreed to play games twice a week, so Wednesdays and Sundays, just to keep up with each other and keep in touch. And we'd have a voice call and we'd just all go, you know, hey, how's it going, man? You know, because we were all inside, we couldn't leave.
Yeah.
We're still doing it to this day, so we've kept it going ever since that first lockdown. So that's I play things like Mario Kart, sometimes play Call of Duty, the older ones. I'm not too fond of the new ones. Street Fighter, stuff like that. So yeah, we're still playing online. I tend not to play with randoms though. I like to play with people.
Yeah, the balance, you can meet some toxic people who are not like on the good same. If you know people are playing, or you meet some good people, it's always fun. I mean, but yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for giving me some pointers. I'm gonna make sure that I check those out. Final Fantasy. I was gonna say, so would you say that the way you had that big love for gaming, that's sort of what helped you try sort of move easily to comic books? Do you think maybe you had these games you wanted to sort of do, but now that was like, okay, I can't do gaming right now, I can't build a game, maybe I can write comic books? Do you think that's what happened in your mind and that got into comic books? How did you sort of I don't know, I'm looking for the right word, move from gaming to comic books?
So kind of like I mentioned, like the fandom was one of the big reasons that I stopped wanting to be a games journalist, because I was getting hounded on Twitter just for like writing, I'd write something positive about a new Sony game and you get Xbox fans like, oh, how much is Sony bribing you, you corporate hack. And I'm like, I'm done. I can't be bothered with this. So I got a job in digital marketing, which I think where a lot of my marketing stuff with the comics comes from. But yeah, I at the time when I left gaming, I was writing for a news website, and it was very quick. It was like a 24-hour, really quick, like rapid, like news kind of service. And the shelf life of news, is quite small. It's quite short. So I thought, all my stuff, I'm putting all this effort into writing all these stories. They're doing well for like a day, and then they just die. And it's like, I want to write something that's going to last, longer. So I started writing a novel. Initially, not a comic. Called Seventh Circle. And I still have I finished it. I might go back and do something like a comic with it eventually. I don't know, but it's not very good. But it's my first ever. It wasn't very good. I'll be honest. I'm not being humble. It was crap. But it was my first ever time trying to write something like that. So I found I was really bad at writing the descriptive stuff. So describing people and atmospheres and what things look like. So I thought, I'm just going to do a comic, because I can have someone draw all that stuff. It's like a shortcut. So I was just being lazy, basically. But I started thinking, what's my first comic going to be? But at the time, I really loved the Fallout games and the Mad Max movies. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do something post-apocalyptic, which is where my first ever comic series, Bust, came from. Very dark, very nihilistic, violent, like Mad Max. It's like that kind of world. The first book came out at Glasgow Comic Con, which is run by my publisher, BHP Comics. In 2015, I think it came out. And it was only ever intended to be a one-off. It was a one-shot. Like, it didn't have a to be continued at the end. It was just, I thought, okay, I've done a comic. I can say I've done that. That's me. I'm not going to do another comic. I'm going to go back to novels. Well, little did I know, people were like, yeah, this is pretty good. And it got good reviews. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something here. So I spoke with the artist and said, do you want to continue the story? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? And I'm like, cool. And that's
how it happened.
Yeah, it was almost by accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that first comic, we did a Kickstarter for that as well in 2014, really early on in the life cycle of Kickstarter. But the only reason I could do that is because through my games journalism, I had interviewed a lot of game developers that were using Kickstarter, because it was when they started doing that, all of a sudden the media were like, oh, what's this new Kickstarter thing? Oh, is this the next big thing in independent, video game making?
Yeah.
But then I started to see that, hey, comics can be made on Kickstarter. So we tried it. We did it successfully. Barely. We barely made our target.
Yeah.
It convinced me to use it and use it as a platform, So here we are.
Man, that's an amazing story, man. Just seeing how far you've come. I'm so interested though in Killtopia because I like the look of that graphic novel. I may call it graphic novel, right? Did you? It's got that Japan, feel to it. Did you ever go to Japan at all to feel and maybe draw inspiration from there? Because it's really good from details from the writing, the art, everything. Like, tell me, how did that come about?
So I went to Japan in 2020 for the first time. So that would have been like Killtopia 3. So the first 2 issues I hadn't been to Japan, but I was obsessed with the culture. Like I love like old school anime, the Japanese gaming scene. I have friends over there as well. So it didn't always have to be set in Neo Tokyo, but I thought it was just such a cool vibe. I thought, okay, I love that sort of Asian influenced cyberpunk feel. I mean, you see a bit of it in like Blade Runner or stuff like that. There's definitely like a Japanese influence there. So I thought I really like that vibe. So let's just go with it. Helpfully though, the artist on the first 2 books, Craig Payton, his brother lived in Japan at the time. So he was kind of our creative consultant, I guess. We were asking him questions like, oh, would people act like this? Would this thing be like this? What would this be like? One of the things that he helped me with, this is just a silly example, in the script for the first one, I was going to have a scene it got cut in the end, but there was going to be a scene in a train station.
Yeah.
Shinji, the main character, was going to be walking through a train station, monologuing, talking about something. And I said, oh, because it's cyberpunk and it's kind of gritty, like the train station's all like broken down, it's all disgusting, and he said, absolutely not. Japanese culture, they take so much pride in their infrastructure that if a train is even a minute late, and this is no joke, this is true. If a train is even a minute late, one train, the company running the train takes out an apology in the newspaper the next day, because they realize that even 1 minute can make people late for their jobs and it can ruin people's days. So they take so much pride in their transport infrastructure. He said, no, they would not allow, even in cyberpunk Japan, they would not allow the train station to go to shit like that. So we changed it. The scene got cut in the end, but it was little cultural things like that helped us sort of nail the vibe. And I guess also, when you look at the color palette of Killtopia, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of cyberpunk, I'll be honest, but I like the aesthetic. And what I didn't want to do was have it be like Blade Runner, where it's kind of raining all the time. It's dark. There's some neon, sure, but it's kind of dark and gloomy and sort of like a neo-noir kind of thing. I thought, nah, that's been done before. So that's why the color palette in Killtopia is just so nuts. It's just like vibrant hot pinks and like turquoise and bright yellows. And we thought, yeah, let's just do the inverse of that, and that'll make it a style that stands out. And I think we achieved that, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when I opened Killtopia for the first time, I was like, this guy is like throwing a knife or he's shooting something, and you can see the trail of that happening from different angles. It's like nuts. And then I'm reading the dialogue in there, but I want to see what's actually happening, and you find yourself looking like this, and it's brilliant, man. So like finding the artist first for Killtopia, like what did you look for? What did you look for in an artist? How did you communicate that really well to your artist before you did the first part 1 of Killtopia?
It was kind of natural, to be honest, because Craig had done a few covers. Well, he did all the covers for the first 3 issues of Bust, my first series. So we knew each other already. But we just got talking, like, I think I started teasing Killtopia on Facebook. I'll probably get these details wrong because it's quite a long time ago, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we just got talking and I was like, hey man, do you want to work on a comic together? And I mentioned that I was thinking about doing a cyberpunk story.
Yeah.
And it just so happened though that Craig is a big fan of like Mobius and Jeff Darrow and 2000 ED type stuff. So it's like he was the perfect fit, and his style was already kind of like that, like really fine line art and like really detailed and intricate. And when you look at like robots in Kiltopia, there's like he gave a lot of consideration to like all the moving parts and the little bits of machinery. Like it's great, and it just sort of happened by accident.
Yeah,
Again,
I guess it's.
you
I
know.
think yeah, it's about like I feel like you and Craig, you have like a great working relationship. I think there has to be that sort of a level of communication so that when you say something, he knows what you're after, and the amount of details I see in Kiltopia is insane, man. I think just from the script now that translating to a comic book, you guys have been killing it, man. Like that's the first comic that every time I go to your website, I'm like, this guy. I'm just putting off my hat off you. So what do you think, like, generally, like, of the community, the comic book community in Scotland? Do you think it's, I mean, there's a lot of indies creating stuff. Do you think this is a great time for indies to be creating stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like for many reasons, yeah. I mean, like the community, as you know, is like it's just friendly. Like
Yeah.
we're all supporting each other's stuff. We see each other at Comic Cons, and we've got each other's back and stuff, which is nice. I will say though, like that there's probably less Comic Cons now than there was in previous years. I mean, we've lost, Edinburgh Comic Con is no more, which is a shame because it was a really good show. I hope it comes back someday. I think Aberdeen, Granite City, I think is stopped now. Don't quote me on that. It's maybe taking a break, perhaps.
Yeah.
But that said, you don't have to rely on Comic Cons to get out there. It helps. It's nice to have face-to-face time with your audience, and networking after the show with other creators and stuff is always helpful. But yeah, things like Kickstarter, social media have shown, Patreon, things like that have shown that you can do all of this remotely. You don't have to be there in person. You don't have to do that. So I think you have much more tools now to fund and make your comic online independently than ever before. So I think the only thing that's stopping new creators is just actually doing the work. And I say that because I hear this a lot, at Comic Cons. I get like, so the story I always tell was at Manchester MCM. A mum came up to the table with her young son. I think he must have been like early teens or something, or maybe like primary school or something. I'm bad with ages. But basically she said, oh, like he really wants to write a comic book and he was all shy, but he doesn't know how to start. And I was like, so have you got an idea? It's like, yeah, I've got like all the ideas and the characters. And I'm like, how do I start writing? And I said, well, not being a dick, just start. And he was, oh, but it might not be good. I'm like, yeah, but that's like your first draft. That's where you start to improve from. The first draft, you get that done, you learn, you improve, and then you just learn by doing, right?
That's what I always tell people. Like for me, I come from Congo, right? It's a French-speaking country. So coming to Scotland was a big change for me, and getting into comics is something I really wanted to do. And I know I can write something, but I always need some sort of collaboration for someone else to look at it and be like, okay, Etian, can we take this out? Can we add this so that it goes really well? And that's why me and Gary work really well with Beats of War, because he does that. And people are always afraid to start. I'm like, find somebody who's better at it to review it and find money to pay them, because it's not a free industry. And that's the thing I'm always fascinated about. Like people are so scared to invest in themselves and invest in what they want to do. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, like spot on. I mean, like I would wholeheartedly recommend that everyone doing this gets an editor. Like it's because man, like you become when you're so close to a project, you become blind to your own mistakes, typos and things like that, right? And I've had so many revisions of a script, and we've caught typos in the very last version just before it goes to print, and I'm just like, oh my god, like it happens. It's you need to have that critical feedback, constructive, not like it. And I think that's what people are afraid of, that they won't be able to take the feedback. But that's how we learn, right?
That's how
We
you
learn.
learn and you move forward as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you're creating, you're not just creating for you, you're creating a story, but also you want the world to be able to enjoy it. So if you create it and you're like, this is just my, I don't want nobody to look at it, I'm just going to stay protective over it. I feel like it doesn't work like that, man. Even we're talking about like in film, my film script was like 160 pages, but I had the script editor who came on as a co-writer who had to go through and be like, Etienne, way too much information. You kind of lost yourself here, So we kind of had that heated conversation. He was very honest with me, and then we just went back and restructured the whole thing. And look, and we have a movie now. So yeah, it's always good to collaborate, man. Like constructive criticism, me, I love it. Tell me more, so I can be better, so I don't repeat the same mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've actually in recent years changed my writing process completely. Not for Kiltopia, because those are already written, my new stuff that I'm working on. So like a BPM, Ninja Baseball, those were kind of, I mean, I wrote them, but they were kind of co-created with the artist Steve, who is one of my best friends now. He joins our game night, and we just work. You need, like you say, you need to find that person like you and Gary who work well together, right? So even before I start writing a script, we'll actually sit down like this on Zoom calls and be like, okay, so we have our idea, we have our characters, what's the story arc? And we'll actually co-create that whole arc on a Google Doc, a shared document, something like that. Yeah. Just talking like this, right? Oh, what if this could happen? Okay, but what's the reason for this? There's kind of a plot hole here. Why would this happen? How would the characters react to that? How did he get from here to there? And we start to map out the whole arc before I even start writing it. Man, that makes writing it so much easier. And it also means that, Steve has to draw the whole damn thing. So like if he's kind of had that input into it and he's happy with it, it just makes the process much smoother. So I'm working on a few pitches just now as well. Very slowly though. I don't think they'll happen anytime soon. But I'm at the moment just doing that right now with the artists. There's two projects I'm potentially working on there, but I'm speaking with them just now. Okay, I'm the writer. Everyone thinks the writer has all the answers, but I kind of don't agree with that. Because Kiltopia 3, 4, and 5, Clark, the new artist, has come in and changed things. Not he asked me first, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's way better than what I had. So why, it's about not being protective of your own ideas, too much, and allowing like other people to make suggestions, right? So, and I think yeah, like the new pitches I'm working on, we're doing that just now. Okay, I think I know what the whole story is, but I'm unclear about this bit. And one of the artists went, oh, well, what if we change this to this? And I'm like, he's got it, he's done it. And and I don't think. It's much better than me sitting there for hours stressing about it, like, oh my God, this story idea is not working. When somebody else could just look at this and go, oh, there's the answer. And I'm like, oh, cool. So collaboration, man, you're right. It's not something to be afraid of. Don't be afraid to show people your ideas if you feel they're not working quite right, because other people will probably have the answer for you.
I take it from like life experiences and things that people get exposed to in life through gaming or things they love. We sort of like could get different ideas based on our life experience. So I could be stuck on this one scene or with this one panel, and you come and be like, Etienne, how about you do it the other way around? It's because I just didn't think like that. My mind was not like that. And I think that's why collaboration, and that's why sometimes I come up with an idea and then Gary would be like, but how about you try that? And I'm like, oh, that's better. I didn't think that. So, yeah, man, I totally understand with collaboration, and I think it's very, very important. I wanted to touch on this point, though, because I thought it was quite important. Do you think there's a point where you reach as a big fan of a comic books and graphic novel where you stop consuming so much of these and then sort of put a gap between you creating your own stuff and then maybe having some time when you're off to read the comic books? Do you get time where you have to sort of be like, okay, I'll stop reading so many comic books now, let me go back and create?
Oh, definitely. Oh, 100%. I try not to, when I'm properly actively writing a script, I tend not to read any comics at all, because I don't want to be overly swayed by what I'm reading. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to start subconsciously changing things just because of that. I like to stay in my own style, and I don't want to be over influenced.
Yeah.
Plus, for me, I'd say my biggest influence is video games, to be honest. And we're not talking story stuff; it's more thematics. Like I feel maybe like a cool set piece that I can think, oh, I could do my own spin on that, or So I mean, the biggest example for me is something like Kiltopia's Neo Tokyo. I knew that for that comic to work, the setting itself had to feel like a real place. It had to feel like its own character for people to think, oh, this is a really interesting world. It has its own rules and mechanics. And in game terms, that was inspired by things like games like BioShock, the underwater city of Rapture.
Yeah.
Everyone who reviewed that game at the time said that the city itself felt alive and felt like a tangible character. So that's thematically something we wanted to do in Kiltopia. So that's the kind of level of influence I'm drawing from games. But yeah, I mean, I try not to read too many comics when I'm writing, but yeah, in between I'm like, give me them all. Yeah. My big Comic Con reading list, reading pile gets obliterated between scripts. I just read as much as possible.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's good. So what would you say to a young person who is trying to get into comic books and they don't know what to do? Like, what would be your advice?
There's a few things. I mean, start reading comics for sure. Pay attention to kind of, how they're sort of laid out, things like that. Because I've read a few comic scripts in the past. Sometimes will help people out by looking at like their first draft and stuff for free. I don't charge for it. I probably should, but people did it for me when I was starting. I don't care. And I've read a few scripts where it's like, this page has 12 panels, and I'm like, nope, that's way too much, because you look at the dialogue and it's like this much, and I'm like, yeah, that needs to be at least like 3 or 4 pages worth that you've got there. So look at that kind of thing. Like, look at how other comics space out the dialogue and how they sort of give the art room to breathe, because you don't want to obscure the art with tons of bubbles, right? You don't want that, because it's a visual medium at the end of the day, right? So you want to look at that. I'd say as well, just start writing, and don't worry, don't get too hung up on, what am I trying to say? Don't get too hung up on it in the moment. Yeah. Because the worst thing you can do is get like 4 pages in and then think, oh, this isn't working out. I'm really like this page is like, and you get stuck on that one page. Try your best to get the whole script finished. Even if you're not 100% happy with it, just get all of your idea down on paper. Then you can come back and start breaking it apart, moving scenes around, changing up the dialogue, spacing things out better. Because the hardest part is just finishing that first draft. So as painful as it can be, and I'm guilty of this too, just power through, don't get too hung up on what you're writing, and just finish it. Then you can improve it and make it better. Because the first draft, I mean, you should see some of my first drafts. I mean, people are always like, oh yeah, man, like you've done a few comics, you should be like pretty good at no.
We gotta start. I believe you've got to start somewhere, and I think that's the only way we can actually grow. Man, thank you so much. Like, honestly, you're very busy, but you took time to even speak to me about comic books. Even me chatting to you, I'm inspired in any way. I've got some ideas that I picked up from you. I've got now a new list of games to try. And man, do you want to tell everybody where they can find your comic books, where they can buy your comic books?
Yeah, so I have a big cartel store if you just search like Dave Cook Comics, but the best way is to just get me on Twitter. So it's at Dave S. Cook. And in my bio, there's like a link tree, so you can just find all my stores and all my like places where you can buy my stuff there. And yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter. That's where you can find out about all my projects. So yeah, it's probably the best place to go.
Yeah, and you've got some Kickstarter, which is gonna come very soon. So people should check you out on Kickstarter as well. Man, David, Dev, just thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy, you got stuff going on, but just taking a moment to speak about comic books, I feel way pumped up and I'm ready to go now. And I feel like I was stuck on a certain page and I need to go do something about it and map out my story properly. Thank you so much, man. And I appreciate you, what you're doing in the community. And I can't wait to see you again at the Comic-Con.
So I'm doing Capital Sci-Fi Con in February in Edinburgh. I'm doing Acme Comic Con in Glasgow in March. I've applied for MCM London in May. I haven't heard back yet, but fingers crossed. and I'm going to apply for the October MCM and the Thought Bubble in November. So
Yeah,
I might do some more, but those are the main ones I do every year. So
nice
yeah,
one.
hopefully I get into them all again.
Appreciate you so much. I appreciate you so much, man.
Thanks,
And
man.
I'll see you around in Edinburgh. I'm in Glasgow at some point. If you're in Glasgow, hit me up. Let's say grab a drink. You know, if you're done gaming and you think there's an online thing that you could check out, Etian, just let me know, man. I'm ready to get back into gaming, and I think it's a medium that I've been wanting to go back into because I've been so busy. But now I feel like I've got some time where I can just relax and dive into another world. And just feel pumped up. Thanks you so much, and have a good one. Yeah, have a good day.
You too. Take care. Thank
Cheers.
you.